All right. So go ahead and get started 5 minutes after, maybe some others that continue to join. But I just want to say thank you for joining me on our first webinar within this series, talking about artificial intelligence as applied to project management. And going ahead and getting started, we see that we have several images in front of us, right? They're very happy-go-lucky, and how in the world does this apply to either project management or large language models? But it really goes back to how large language models work. And I believe that a fundamental knowledge is helpful to understand how to improve your prompts, understand how you engage within the tools that you use in everyday life, right? So when we think about different things that happen to exist in our lives, we have the sun, and large language models have a pattern that emerge. And a tree is still a tree, and it still has a relationship to the sun, but depending on where you are and the language that you speak, there's a different relationship. So here's an example of an English translation to a French translation. And large language models are built on physics, the reasons that they work. It's not an unlimited number of relationships. It's finite because physics, the things of matter, matter cannot be created or destroyed. And taxonomy, which is the art or the science of naming and classifying, means that we are really good at humans of naming things. We may use different languages, but those names are applied in large language models through relationships. So the cat chases the bird, the cat climbs the tree because the bird is in the tree, and the tree lives because the sun gives it light. So you can start to see how those relationships evolve and how that's input into a large language model and how that transforms over different languages. So when we look at transformers, or what large language models are built on, they transform the relationships between naming conventions and other words, right? So if we take a movie script, a large language model will break that up in many, many smaller sections and then translate and make relationships across that entire movie script. But here, a very simple concept is a mother is also a daughter, but a daughter is not always a mother. So it's a one-way relationship. So as you think through that, the same thing with the father and the son, you start to see how all of these different words live in relationship to each other, and it actually creates, break it down, a geometric shape that you can actually map out. And then what they found with the large language model is that as you look at different languages, the relationships are often very similar. And so you can layer French, you can layer Chinese. A tree is a tree, it's just a different word, but the tree and the cat have the same relationship. The mother and the daughter have the same relationship, even though it's a different word. So that's the basis of a large language model and the transformers that we use. But how does that apply to project management? How is that going to make me a better prompt engineer? Well, what large language models do at scale is they understand and map out relationships that exist already using a lot of information. Let's say the Project Management Institute Book of Knowledge, or the PMBOK, is within the large language model. So when you start to use words like project, it's trained to transform project, program, portfolio, and to make those relationships for you. So it has that knowledge within it, but how do we apply that to every day within our own industry, within project management or work even? Well, now we take our project, and this is how Microsoft Project works, is they take the knowledge within one project and then compare that and analyze it using the relationships within the large language model, and it retrieves the information that you're asking for. So your prompts. At scale, there's a challenge. So what happens if you have two interrelated projects that you now need to send to the large language model and you want to query? Well, quality of your prompt will improve based off of you giving that context of saying, I want information from project A and project B, put that together and give me a unified view of where we are within those projects. And it may even find where the projects overlap with each other, even without managing the dependencies. Now we have additional data held elsewhere that we want to include. So you can start to see as the complexity, the size of the organization grows, how the context becomes more and more important, especially as we start to bring in different departments because marketing uses one tool, product development uses another tool, and we have to somehow send all of that data to a large language model. And that's where we see a lot of different advents, like Salesforce is using this model. N8N, which is a robotic processing automation platform, does this for you, where you can actually send all of your data into a new type of database or a data lake, and then you're allowing the reference model to use your data for you to get information. But managing that context and how much data you put into those data lakes is the challenge. And that is how scale will happen with artificial intelligence, is being able to manage the context that you send. Today, it's all relative to what you provide that large language model. So let's say that we're not integrating AI into our platform. You are pivoting in your chair, you're giving it the context that you wanted to give, and then you're asking questions. But we've all seen that over time, if you continue to ask questions, it becomes overfit. And that is the equivalent of taking one project and training an entire model based off that project. It doesn't have the reference or the scale of your entire organization. So it's only giving you information based off of the overfit model or that one project. So it becomes challenging, it becomes limiting. So how do we overcome this? So it's the human aspect, even with large language models, of how we choose to engage with artificial intelligence, which is why you don't see a lot of large language models integrated successfully into workflows yet. Because it takes the human to understand the various contexts of the various projects, products that you're working on, to then integrate that knowledge into a smart question, managing what you're putting within the prompt and what you're trying to get from that information. Because you don't want to ask a question without giving the information. You know it won't be a right answer. But the challenge with this is what happens when you don't know if it's a right answer or not. So that's the caution that we introduce. So now think about your organization as a whole. As one person, you're overcoming this challenge because you're managing the artificial intelligence. You're managing that chat interface. But now imagine you need to collaborate and you need to get work done across many team members. That becomes a challenge, right? Because as you think about your value work stream, you think about all the different things that you touch, your task lists, your tickets, your project boards, your wiki pages. Now you even introduced personal notes because so often our team members are not empowered to use some of the tools that they have because they say, oh, that's for my manager or that's for the project manager. That tool is not for me. So you often find that people keep personal notes with the very important context that you need to be able to integrate within your large language model, but it's not there today. So that's why it continuously goes back to the person is the glue and the context provider. So as you think through how you work and how you would like to work and the ways that you could integrate large language models into a workflow, you need to think about all of the aspects of where the data is actually held and stored. And you need to think about the prompts that you provide and the context that you provide. Because let's say that you just want to have two projects in a wiki. You'll upload that, or if it already has that information in a database, then you'll manage your prompt on that. Or you'll be specific and also add multiple product boards. But you can see how that's challenging to scale. So as you think about your value work stream and the issues that you're going to have within a few use cases that are recommended with today's limitations. So, a really great example of being able to use a large language model is when you go ahead and you draft your project plan. So, you give it the context and you're checking your work. So, the way that you would do that is you upload your task and then you would ask a large language model, hey, what task would you give me? And did I miss any task? So, it's checking your work. Another example is stakeholder management. So, this is where you're trying to improve your writing because you're sending out reports, updates, communications that are critical to keep all stakeholders up to date and informed so they can then help with informed decisions. And additionally, get templates. So if you're facing a challenge you've not yet experienced, it is best practice to work within your organization that already have the context, the people. But let's say that they've not experienced something like that before. It is helpful to be able to ask ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini for templates or their reasoning of what to do next. And like I shared before, even the large language models were able to pass the PMP exam. So it does have training on the PMBOK, which is the Project Management Book of Knowledge. And you just want to be able to double check your work. Same thing like you're doing a research paper, right? You would check multiple references and make sure that you agree with those references and that it fits your circumstance. So, highly recommend that you actually try a couple different prompts until you get to the right one. But you want to double check your work, improve your writing, and get templates. So, based off of historical actions, what should I do next? So, a couple of key takeaways is ask if you're using a large language model in the right use case. And are you challenging your decisions? I'm sure some of us have gone to a mentor and we've asked the question, and our mentor comes back to us and says, why are you even asking me that? And they then uncover the real problem, right? Whereas large language models, not today, really challenge why are you asking that question? Could that be a better question? And are you asking for new information? So, one of the things that we have to keep in mind is those relationships are historical relationships, and we may not have the most up to date context layered on top of it. Imagine your organization uploaded everything in their databases. What is time relevant? So now you're starting to see a time, I think a TLM, which is the time-based language model, to add like version control and time variance. But you want to make sure that you're getting the most up-to-date information and not just the most referenced or most common information available. And then you want to make sure that your prompts have context. Think through with the multiple projects, the wiki pages. Are you being specific of the projects and the wiki pages to include, or are you not setting the context first? And I've seen of some of these challenges where you have multiple chats open and you use the same chat for everything. Well, it's considering everything that you've asked of it previously. So you just want to make sure that the context and the information that you provide is very important. And finally, with all information, it's very important to understand how you're validating the information that you're getting. You want to make sure that you stay curious, that you are using it as a tool, a resource. But imagine you went to a coworker and you ask them how to do something and you absolutely know that is not how you do it. But they've told you that and they fully believe that. But one, you may have just tried it, or two, you absolutely know that's not correct. That's the same kind of curiosity and challenging and validation that we need to do even with large language models today, that we don't trust blindly. So for all of these reasons, it's very challenging to implement large language models at scale and within workflows because you have to manage all of those variable complexities. And just imagine in project management, we do that today with our dependencies. So that's just a little bit of foreshadowing of what's to come and what we're building at Project BIOS, of managing those complexities, managing those value streams, and integrating that data to make a seamless transition across both humans and artificial intelligence. Because keep in mind, we don't just use large language models, we also use the machine learning and other various forms to be able to get to the results that we need.
Thank you for joining this webinar presented by Project BIOS and Zach Curry. If you have questions or feedback, please send those to zach.curry@projectbios.com. And please join us in our future webinars to dive deeper into artificial intelligence as applied to project management. Thank you.